Okay, so when you think of Saudi Arabia, what comes to mind? For most of us, it's probably two things: these huge sweeping deserts and just immense oil wealth. But underneath all of that, there's this really deep and difficult paradox. The kingdom is one of the richest nations on earth, but at the same time, it's one of the most water poor. And this is the incredible story of how they're trying to engineer their way out of that very problem.
You know, this one analogy really just hits the nail on the head. Imagine having a palace made of solid gold, but you only have 2 sips of water to drink. That single image perfectly captures the crisis that has pushed Saudi Arabia to build one of the most massive engineering projects in human history.
And this number right here is the whole reason why. 0. That's right, 0. That is the total number of permanent natural rivers in the entire country. Not a single one. It's a pretty staggering fact, and it really sets this stage for everything that's about to happen. So that brings us to our first big topic, this foundational challenge. I mean, how do you even begin to build a modern nation in a kingdom that has no rivers?
So what you're looking at here is basically the perfect storm. First, you have a country that's 98% desert. The rainfall in its capital, Riyadh, is just a tiny 116 millimeters a year. And on top of that, look at the population boom, from just 3 million people in 1950 to over 26 million today. When you put all that together, you get this absolutely unbearable pressure on water resources that, let's be honest, were never really there to begin with.
So what was their first move? Well, for decades they had a secret weapon. Kind of. A hidden treasure buried deep beneath the sand. But here's the catch. It had a ticking clock. This secret weapon? It's called fossil water. And it's pretty much exactly what it sounds like. Ancient water trapped in underground aquifers for millions of years. The most important thing to know about it, though, is that it's non-renewable. Once you use it, it is gone forever. And for decades, this was the source of about 70% of the kingdom's water. And this quote just says it all, doesn't it? Using fossil water is exactly like having a phone battery that you can never, ever recharge. You can see exactly where the story is headed, right? It was a temporary solution to a permanent problem.
Okay, so this timeline, this is where things get really wild. It shows how a plan that sounded pretty good on paper ended up fast-tracking a disaster. So in the 70s, the government wanted the country to be self-sufficient in food. So what did they do? They decided to grow wheat in the middle of the desert. And yeah, it worked, but at a catastrophic cost. By 2003, farming was gulping down 85% of that precious fossil water. And then, in 2016, the real alarm bells went off when NASA found that the aquifers were being drained by 2 trillion liters a year. I mean, just look at that. 85%. That is an insane amount of their one single non-rechargeable water source, literally being poured into the desert to grow crops. So the crucial point is, this was completely unsustainable. The government really had no choice but to shut the whole wheat program down and declare that what was left of the fossil water was for emergencies only.
So, with their only real water source now basically off limits, they had to do something drastic. They turned to an idea so big, so ambitious, it sounds like science fiction. The plan was simple. If nature won't give us a river, fine. We'll just build one ourselves.
And this is that river. We're not talking about a little canal. This is a massive underground pipeline network, stretching 12,000 kilometers. And the pipes themselves, huge, 11 meters wide, 4 meters deep. And the goal? To move 9.4 billion liters of fresh water every single day. The scale is just absolutely mind-boggling.
To really get a sense of how huge this is, check this out. We all know the Nile River, right? The longest natural river on Earth. Well, this artificial river network, it's designed to be nearly twice as long. It's an underground river system so vast, it's just wild to even think about.
Okay, so where's all this water coming from? Well, from the ocean. The main way they do it is a process called multi-stage flash distillation. It sounds complicated, but the basic idea is super simple. You just boil a ton of seawater. That creates steam, which leaves all the salt behind. Then you just cool down that pure steam. It condenses and boom, you've got fresh water. The only difference is they're doing it on an epic scale, with steel tanks the size of football fields.
Now there's another method, and this is the more modern, high-tech way to do it. Reverse osmosis. This one is way more energy efficient. So instead of boiling, think of it like a super, super advanced filter. You use incredible pressure to force seawater through this special membrane. The pores in it are so tiny that only the water molecules can squeeze through, leaving 99% of the salt and all the other gunk behind. The result is perfectly pure water.
All right, so this all sounds amazing, right? A technological miracle. Problem solved, but not so fast. When you create billions of liters of fresh water every day, you also create another massive problem. What on earth do you do with all the salt you just took out?
So let's just remember the achievement here. 9.4 billion liters. Every day. That's the win. That's the life-giving water that keeps a whole nation going. An incredible success. But every success comes with a price tag.
And this? Well, this is the daily bill. To get that fresh water, you're left with 329,000 tons of this super concentrated salty sludge called brine. And that's not the total. That's the byproduct they have to deal with every single day.
Okay, 329,000 tons. That number is so big it's kind of meaningless, right? So let's put it this way. That's the same weight as 1,645 blue whales. You know, the biggest animal on the planet. Imagine that many whales worth of salty waste being produced daily. It's an environmental cost that is almost impossible to wrap your head around.
And right now, where does all that brine go? It gets dumped right back into the sea. This stuff dramatically increases the local ocean's temperature and saltiness, and that creates these awful dead coral zones, areas where the fragile marine life of the Red Sea just can't survive. It's a huge, unseen threat to the entire coastline. So this brings us to the next great challenge, right? They solved one problem, not having water, and in doing so, they created a whole new one. Now the kingdom is in this race against itself to solve the very problem its own solution created. And what they do next could be a blueprint, or a warning, for the rest of us. And here are the two main ways they're trying to tackle it. First, you've got things like deep-sea diffusers, which is basically damage control, spreading the brine out so it's less toxic in any one spot. But the second idea, this is the really cool one, brine mining. The thinking here is, wait a minute, what if this waste isn't waste at all? What if it's a resource? The idea is to pull out valuable minerals like magnesium and potassium right from the brine. But there's one more huge cost we have to talk about, and it's been hiding in plain sight this whole time, energy. I mean, this whole system needs an unbelievable amount of power to run. Get this, just the pumping stations, the things that push all that water uphill to the cities, they use up 9% of the entire country's electricity. In a way, they're basically just trading their oil for water.
And all of this leads to this one absolutely wild fact. In 2027, the nation that has 0 natural rivers of its own is going to host the World Water Forum. I mean, think about that. It's this incredible symbol of how they've transformed themselves from a place of desperation to a world leader in water tech. It's an incredible story of ambition and innovation. But as we've seen, every solution seems to create new challenges. So it leaves us with this huge question. And it's not just for Saudi Arabia, it's for all of us as we deal with a changing planet. Can our technology and our ingenuity really conquer geography? Or are we always just trading one set of problems for another?